Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
So before we get started today, what did I take you to do this morning?
I don't know what the back and forth term is called, but we did the infrared sauna and then we did cold plunge and then we went back and forth.
So we were in a 160-degree sauna and then into a 45-degree cold plunge.
Yeah.
Back and forth twice in an hour. And that was quite the experience, wasn't it?
It was. I was at least thankful that in the past I've done ice baths quite a while ago now. I mean, over 10 years ago when I trained for my marathon. And so I at least knew what that was like, and it sucked. Because I did up to 20 minutes in the bathtub, but that wasn't as cold. But that being said, I'm not sure it was that different because maybe I shouldn't say this for anyone who wants to try it who hasn't, but I would say the first minute was the worst. And then
You get numb after that?
and I only did 3 minutes. But I felt like I could have kept going, but if that's enough, like I was cool with that. So yeah, just sitting there and really being present in my body, like just breathing is what I was focusing on.
And there's nothing like cold to plant you firmly in your body.
I agree with that.
I say this to guys when I'm coaching them all the time, that if you want to get out of your head and into your body, step into a hot shower and then turn the temperature all the way down to cold and stand there and breathe without squealing. You will not be lost in your head anymore. You will not be lost in your thoughts. You will be firmly planted in your body.
Yeah. It was really a unique experience, and the second time we did it, I loved it even more. The first time was a little like, okay, I'm going to get through this. And then the second time, I just got in and it felt not quite so bad getting in. And that's when I felt like I could really be present and I could notice the heat of my body in the cold water. Did you notice
Fascinating.
that?
Yeah. I also noticed my dick getting cold.
I know. I was thankful I'm not a man.
Wow. By far, that was the most brutal part of it.
I bet. The interesting thing for me was, I think you said this too, was it was hard to put my hands in the water.
Yeah.
And so I pulled them out because the feet and ankles were challenging enough without any insulation really around them. That was the hardest part for me.
So one of the things I want to talk about today is presence. And, when we hear presence and we think about being present in the moment, a lot of times, we think about that as something that we can do. And presence to me is more of a state of being than it is something that you do. Because like everything else, if you have to force it, you're faking it. If you have to make yourself sit down and get present, you can do it, but you are just like there's a time limit on how long you can force yourself to do anything that isn't coming naturally to you. And a part of what I've tried to lead you to in your submission to me is a life where you can be present in the moments of life without having to force it. So you've talked at length in past episodes about where you used to be in terms of rushing and kind of being lost in your head and all of the things that had to be done. How would you describe what it feels like to be present in your body now?
Gosh, that's a hard one. Because my initial thought was, well, it depends what I'm doing.
Okay,
But
valid point.
but I'm just kind of trying to quick think about the different ways and have a summary here. So for me, what that's like is really losing connection with, again, depending on what I'm doing, like the world beyond me. And like I'm going to give a couple different examples here because, like, if I'm talking with you, you're part of my experience. So it's really focusing on myself, but with you. If I'm, for example, when I was on the rower this morning, I close my eyes and I feel the music in my body and I just feel what I'm doing, what feels like comes from the inside. And I close my eyes because when I take off that sense, um, I feel like I can tune into myself even more. But if I was, let's say, out in nature looking at beautiful scenery, I wouldn't close my eyes because the scenery is part of my experience. And so it's really like forgetting beyond where my attention is, And then in pleasure, for me, it feels like feeling the pleasure alive in my body is where I put my focus. And it has come more naturally and easy when I've gotten rid of all the garbage, most of the garbage. Still working on it, I guess. But a lot of that black cloud on top of it.
That's a really good way of putting it because if we want to be present, if we want to be present in the moment, and we don't want to just continually try to force ourselves into the moment, we have to look at why are we not present?
Absolutely.
What is it that is causing, for example, you in your past to be hurried, to be rushed, to be afraid, to be in the fight or flight mode? Because presence is all about attention. Is your attention on what's happening, what you're feeling, where you are right now, or is your attention somewhere else? And if our attention is on avoiding past traumas, meaning we're thinking about things that happened in the past, maybe not consciously, but that has control of our mind and then is directing our attention to be in a state of fear and avoidance and resistance,
Hmm.
then doing the work to heal those traumas or to get rid of the garbage is one way that you can then automatically come back to being present. Another way that we lose presence is projecting things out into the future. And now we start trying to shape our current actions to try to change the future. And we're only thinking about where we're going and not where we are.
Hmm.
So becoming more present is a process of letting go. It's not a process of doing something, because presence just is being with what is.
Right. And you've probably said this before, but when we don't know what it feels like to be present, which means be in your body, um, it's because of the natural response to any fear, going back to childhood, that's created that blueprint almost for our bodies, which makes our nervous system hold a sort of tension, and lots of different parts of your body hold a tension. And for me, when I've let go of some of that, like, I just feel a natural calmness again in my body. I'm not trying to do anything. Now, do I need to also sometimes redirect my mind? Absolutely, because the mind can just do its thing. But, for me, there was a reason why I was living my life from my head.
Yeah, and being in your head is the opposite of being in your body.
Mhm.
So I just want to give maybe a quick 30 seconds on what I'm talking about there for anyone who hears that language and thinks, what are you talking about being in your body? Everybody kind of knows what it is to be in your head, to be lost in your thoughts, to be thinking about things, planning things, worrying about things. Like, we all kind of know the experience of being in our heads.
Mhm.
But what we don't realize is that if we're in our heads, if we're in overthinking, if we're stuck up here in the mind, we're we're going there because we don't feel comfortable or safe in the present moment. It doesn't feel okay to just be here. We disapprove of here, and we want here to be different. We don't feel comfortable here. So this is a part of what dominance and submission and power exchange has really done for us, is it has allowed me to step into your world and see you. Because before all of this work, before I led you through this work, you were up here all the time. It was very rare that I got to experience you being present in the moment with me. It was rare.
Yep.
It was rare that you got to experience really enjoying a moment like you got to do today in that cold plunge.
I know, when we drove away, I was like, "Wow, like, I can't believe I'm saying this." But that was fun.
So by being able to, by you being able to start letting go of some control, letting me see deeper into you and learning, like honing my capacity and my capability to see deeper into you, I've been able to help look at some of what's been going on inside of you that used to send you to your head all the time. So you lived there, and start clearing some of that mess so that through submission, you can become more of who you are, more present in your life. And like I've said more times than I can count to you, I don't want you to submit to me so that you live a smaller life. I want you to submit to me so that I can set you free. Because I want to experience you in freedom. And there's no freedom being stuck in your head.
No. The word that listening to you speak, the word that just came to my mind was a sense of, like, groundedness. And what I've also had to, quote, unquote, for lack of a better way to say it, work on is my own comfort with emotion and, like, full range of emotion, because we all love to feel happiness and joy and bliss and pleasure and desire, but for me, I had to get really comfortable with feeling anger or grief or like anything of the sort because I like that requires my full presence too, to not suppress stuff, to not feel like I need to dissociate. Because that was one pattern that I really realized that sometimes I'd be feeling something and then all of a sudden it was just like I was numb. And it seems that my body like had this freeze response to certain things. It was just like, nope, don't feel. And that became more and more aware. I became more and more aware of that the more comfortable I got with being present in my own body and continue to do so. And I don't try to run away. I don't judge the emotion that I'm feeling, which therefore allows me to be so much more in my body, even in sex, in all the fun times of life too, and really just be with whatever is.
How does that play out for you when you feel yourself go into some kind of a triggered fear state?
I don't have like real life examples where I have had like real physical fear. So the fear that I'm speaking to here is coming from my mind. Well, I'm going to give one example where I didn't even feel a fear. Last Monday or Sunday, maybe it was, we're down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and you said, "Hey, I've been paying attention to this hurricane that's coming our way called Raphael, and it looks like it shouldn't hit us, but it might." Well, then you changed and you're like, the next day, I think it was like, this hurricane, it might just be a tropical storm. It looks like it's diminishing, but it actually looks like it's going to come this way. So, like, real life example where I could have been freaking the fuck out, right? But I honestly had zero fear at all. There was no part of me that felt any sort of fear rise up to be afraid of what might happen and jump into the mode of like, well, what if this? What if that? Because I just I just can trust too because I've gotten rid of the things that have triggered those fearful responses in me.
Okay, so let's go to a more hypothetical example of like an emotional fear,
Hmm.
something you maybe would be afraid of how you think you might feel. If you get set off in that way, how do you interact with yourself and try to find your way back to the present moment?
Well, I'm trying to think of an actual example, but nothing honestly is coming to my mind except I've been through a lot in the last 3 weeks and before that. And what I feel like is, especially in the last 3 days now, I probably haven't even really shared this with you, but I'm coming out of my bleed. And so I've been in this hibernation mode where I've been really present with myself. I even spent a lot of time in the bedroom.
Yeah, we called it like hibernation. It was like you were in the cave.
Hmm. But it felt so good. Like I just needed that to be so disconnected from everything. And what was beautiful is it was really rainy here that day. So there was no part of me that's like, oh, should I go outside and enjoy the sunshine? Nope. There was no sunshine. Probably would have if there was, but um I can hear sometimes the ego just want to creep in and use some of the ways that I've clung to control in the past that I feel like for me are, let's call it around food and nutrition and like, it's really easy to hear that little devil, um, try to grab my mind and bring me down a rabbit hole and feel and go into a fear because it's really like, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? And if you eat this, you might get fat. Or if you don't work out today for how many days? 3 days at least, I didn't. And in the past, I felt that fear and it would start to just consume my mind in the smallest way. And it's almost as if it, like, got a little hook, and then it got, like, 2 hooks in me, and then all of a sudden, I probably was coming to you because now I'm feeling more of the fear, and I know it didn't always come out as, like, "I'm feeling this right now. I'm feeling my ego try to drag me down." How it would come out is, like, "I kinda wanna work out today," when there was this, like, dissonance in my body of not really feeling like it, but then I that ego hooked me and it made me feel like I actually wanted to work out. And so, like, maybe that sounds like a weird fear, but it was a fear because my fear was what's gonna happen if I don't stay in control of my workouts? What's gonna happen to my body? What am I gonna look like? Am I gonna get fat? Like, that was what was driving a lot of me and that self-hatred. And so what I really noticed for me in the last few days is I really came face to face with some deep, deep wounding in the last 3 weeks. And I was just able to essentially say no thanks and just ignore it and not feel the entanglement and not feeling myself get pulled into that.
So what does that feel like to you to be able to say no thanks? What's that like in your experience instead of that like taking over? Because I'll tell you from my perspective real quickly. Before you were just like it showed up as self-discipline in the nutrition, the working out. It never got to the point of recognizing that you were in fear. You were just working hard all the time. And then as it started to unwind, when it would show up as questioning me, like, am I like, this is too chaotic. This isn't structured enough. I need to be doing more. Are you sure? Like, why did you write this workout that way? All of the ways you would question me, basically trying to assuage your fear by questioning me and on some level trying to control me into getting you or letting you or telling you to work out more or harder because that's what your ego wanted and thought that it needed. And so now if you are hearing those little whispers of something telling you that lie and you're able to just kind of brush it off your shoulder, what does it feel like to you to be there?
I've used this word time and time again, freedom. I d I didn't know what it was like to live without that fear. I didn't know what it was like to live without such self-discipline. I thought that was a good quality. I got praised for it all the time, and rightly so. I mean, right? Like, there is an element to that somewhat to survive. Like, we don't need to pick that apart, but yeah, I got praised for it all the time. And this showed up in school, it showed up in my workouts, it showed up in anything.
Zooming out from the specifics a little bit, I want to illustrate a point here for everyone who's listening, and also for you in any other areas where you feel fear in your life, that it feels like letting go of that fear means that the worst case scenario is going to happen.
Absolutely.
The reality is letting go of that fear gives you this sense of freedom and peace and joy and like lightness, right? I felt the lightness in you when those tears were coming to your eyes, like, oh my God, this is so much different. And this is what you get to experience when you let go of fears, lean into trust, and the belief that life is always happening for you and not to you, that you're not a victim, you are actually a completely abundant, alive spirit, where everything that happens in your life is happening to help show you where you can be more free. And this is what we as dominants can give to our submissives. If we take the control that you give to me, I want to say this a little bit differently. If you submit to me and you tell me to take control of you, and I take that control and then I use it to give you that freedom that you were just in tears over because of what it feels like, how is that not the best thing that we can possibly do with these power exchange dynamics? There's nothing better for me than to see you feeling free, and it makes me want to tear every one of your fears to the ground.
It it really brings a sense of calm in the mind too, because what I didn't realize was how much that fear drove what came through my mind. Because when it was around food, like, you hear a lot of, like, eat healthy, eat whole foods, like, all sorts of different ways of eating, quote, unquote, "right." Well, now you just touched my, like, perfectionism thing.
Mhm.
And so this piece for me was so wrapped up that my mind was so consumed with these things, especially when I wasn't working. Oh my gosh. You you were trying to help set me free in that way, but I've seen time and time again where you would release one thing and then my mind would just grab a hold of something else in a similar way.
Mhm.
And w- once you kind of brought that piece to me, and I just continued plugging forward on trying to just be more of me, um, not trying, just allowing, but that's just how I'm saying it. Like I said this before, it's a whole calm and peace in my body, but having that peace in the mind feels fucking amazing. Like I'm not constantly fighting this little devil on my shoulder.
This is the statement that if we want to be free, we have to be okay no matter what happens. We have to be in a position where we can truly be okay regardless of the outcome in any piece in life. And that's easy in things where there's not fear. But when there's fear involved and those fears are coming from those really deep places, it doesn't feel like you didn't feel like you would be okay if this thing that you were afraid of, if you let go of it. There were certain outcomes you could not accept. And because of the fear of those outcomes, now you're carrying around that energy of fear and resistance to reality through every moment. And it's not just showing up when it's time to work out. And it's not just showing up when you sit down to eat. It's showing up when we start planning a date night and you start thinking about what the food is going to be. And we start planning a trip and you start worrying about whether or not there's going to be a gym in the hotel. And that's just this example. Anything where you as my submissive, as my partner, as my wife are carrying fear inside of you, it's impacting you and therefore me and our relationship, our dominant submissive dynamic, and everything about our life because you are now not present in the moment. You are in the head. You're in your mind and not in your body. So this is why identifying those areas of fear and setting you free from them makes everything feel more free.
Yeah. I remember the moment in relation to this thing for me that you brought up that, can you be okay with every possible outcome? And I was like, fuck no. And we had already talked like in that regard, but um once I like let that triggered response settle down, the hard part for me was like I can know. Now my mind can know that this isn't going to happen, but it didn't feel true. So now like I'm in reverse. I can use my mind to be like, you know what? I know that won't happen. But now just saying that out loud, almost I'm like, that's probably still the ego. Because now it's like, oh, that's not going to happen. And, it can take this like side angle of like keeping you from getting to the wound underneath why I'm showing up this way, why everything feels like fear in relation to the food and the fitness.
Well, and again, we're using food and fitness as an example here to illustrate a point. For somebody else who's listening here, it might not be food and fitness. It might be any number of things that cause your submissive to be out of the moment and stuck in her head. But it's that energy of not being okay unless things go the way that you want them to go that puts you in a position where you need to be in control, which is the opposite of submission. So if I want you to experience the full freedom of being submissive, I also need you to be able to let go of control. And that's not just as easy as telling you let go of control.
Sometimes I wish it was.
Instead, I have to help you see why it is that you are grabbing onto control, why it is that you're holding on to control. I have to lead you to a place where you can admit to yourself what you're actually afraid of, and then start helping you look more deeply at where that fear comes from. What is its root? And start tearing the root out so that it doesn't continue to lead you into your mind, lead you into the fear reaction, and then into the control, which is taking you out of connection with me.
Yeah. And all of this work that I've done around fear has required my presence with myself. Stillness, space, alone time. Alone time where I can be with what I'm feeling and not scrolling social media or just reading a book so I'm distracted. It's been hugely important.
Taking away some of those distractions, well, I'll say it this way. I can't just take away the distractions because, well, I'm your dominant and now you're not going to scroll on social media. You know what? I do have the authority in this relationship to do that. What I can't do is then impact what goes on inside of your mind, your body, your head, your experience once that thing is removed. If I don't help you come to a place where you can be more comfortable being present, you're just going to run off into thinking about something else or filling that time with something else, like you mentioned a little bit ago. So again, this is why in a bedroom scene, you can very easily get away with do what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it, how I tell you to do it. Put your hands there. Do not move them until I give you permission. And you can say,
Yes, sir.
good girl. But when it comes to dealing with real life, it doesn't work the same. It can't work the same. And people then think that it can't work in a 24/7 relationship, that it can't work when you're in love, it can't work in a marriage. Of course it can. You just have to have more tools in the tool belt. As the dominant, as the leader, you have to be able to make some art out of this instead of just using a hammer and trying to continually pound in nails. This is like, it's gardening in some ways. I have to kind of plant seeds and then let them grow, let you see something, and let you see it for yourself, and then teach you a lesson that I couldn't have taught you until that seed had grown, until that thing had happened in your life.
There's been plenty of times over and over and over again where I've heard you say something and I'm like, yep, I hear that. And then all of a sudden later on, fast forward a little bit, and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel that now. And that's the big difference of knowing and, well, being in your head and being in your body. And it's not that our minds are useless, but we need to learn how to connect the mind and the body experience also by being present.
Right, because then eventually the goal being that you can be out of that experience of the mind as much as possible and be in the body, and you can just be in submission. And life can look more like, put your hands there, do not move them unless I give you permission. And now you can actually follow that because all of the muck is gone that would cause you to have a fear response, or that would cause you to question or go in your head or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get there. We just can't hammer our way there. We have to garden our way there. That brings up a really interesting thought for me, because when you say, like, you'll hear me say something and maybe it'll make sense cognitively, but it doesn't feel real until sometime later. This is why consistency and persistence is so damn important on the dominant side. Because if let's say I'm trying, let's say I want to explore some new kink with you. People like to listen to our podcast and think that we don't do kink. Let's say that there's a new kink that I want to introduce you to, and you go, and then I just drop it because you weren't immediately into it, and then I just never come back to it. Then neither one of us ever get to experience that. Where if I bring it up and you go, and then over time, I continue to show you different places that this particular kink might add to our fun or our enjoyment together, and cultivate your opportunity, I guess, to see if there's something in it for you or not. If I can be persistent and consistent, I never have to violate your consent. I never have to force you. I never have to manipulate you. And you might never come around to it. And I have to accept that that's okay. But also you might. And if you do, and it's a good experience for us, now the fact that I didn't just back down and I didn't push. Now we both get to experience something that is a new source of fun, pleasure, and enjoyment for us.
Yeah, and we've experienced that. And I'm going to tie this back to presence again, because there were plenty of times where I would experience some pleasure because of one. And then the next time it was like, nope, that's not turning me on today. And I didn't really understand what was going on at the beginning. But then eventually I recognized that when I approach life or approach kinks from my head, it's not the same thing as experiencing them in the body and letting your body light up or not light up but it requires me being in my body to truly know what is pleasurable for me or not. And I'm thankful for where you've led me in that. Lots of fun.
So much more fun. This is why, again, I think doing dominance and submission in short-term scenes maybe lets you move on from someone to someone else if this person isn't like immediately into the things that you want to be in. Like, sure, if you're in that stage of your life and those are the kinds of relationships you want to have, but to cultivate these things slowly, patiently, with love over time, it's such a big gift because it's taught me so much about myself. It's taught me about patience. It's taught me like where I'm being needy. It's shown me so much about where my energy around any of this stuff actually pushes you away and makes it harder for you to really explore it for yourself. And just one little reason for that is like if I'm getting needy about something, I really want something from you, and you just aren't there, and you start, now I put you in a position where you're probably going to start backing away and digging in your heels if you feel me pushing. But also, then if you start digging in your heels and pushing back or avoiding something that I want and I'm getting needy or pushy with, and it's something that maybe would have ended up being fun for both of us together, now I've taken that away from you and from us because of my neediness. And that's a gift to be able to hone that in ourselves as dominance with the patient, like learning patience, learning to speak up for our desires, but also be patient with, like, all of this is what you only get to do when you stick with someone and you work through this stuff over time.
Yeah, when you get needy about something and it's a fear for me, I've experienced this. Um, Feeling that intense trigger is like something else, aka the ego, and I'm gonna keep calling it the little devil on my shoulder. Um, it's like something else comes over me and I can't not be triggered. I've had a couple moments like that. And the last time I feel like it happened, it was really I don't even know how to say it. It was so intense, and it was almost like I was witnessing myself from outside of my body, but I was still here. And so I want to bring that up because sometimes these things get triggered, but when that trigger arises, now we know there's something there. There's a fear there. And we don't need to like push through these fears when they're that big, but we can start to let ourselves be with that. And how you approach that is a very unique situation. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to do that. But for me, when I have had those, it shows me something about myself and allows me to start to just be with it in a new way. And I didn't always approach things that way. But I eventually got to a point where I recognized that if I have that kind of response, there's something in me that is not serving me. And the key is to get to what's underneath it. It's not all about just that fear. It's something underneath it.
This is, okay, really deep nuance here. This is something that I think anyone who pursues these kind of dynamics and this kind of authenticity long enough will probably run into something like what I'm about to talk about here. But from the dominant perspective, from the leader perspective, and from the perspective of someone who loves you like crazy and is committed to loving you forever, if there's something that I really want and you're having that fear-based reaction to it, now I'm in a real pickle because A, I've already told you that I want it. And you've had that fear response to the fact that I want something. And now the part of me that's seeing you, my consciousness that's seeing you, that loves you and is seeing this fear in you, that's like we were talking about before with exercise, that if that fear is in you, it's affecting you in all kinds of other ways, a lot of which we don't even know. And then what kicks in for me is I want to help set you free from that fear. But setting you free from that fear feels like you're also then giving in to the thing that I was originally saying that I wanted that set that fear off, and it helps to reinforce that fear. When what I really want is for you to be free from the fear, regardless of whether or not the thing happens. They become two parallel, separate things, but it's really easy for them to get attached. And if you can see that in a situation and recognize like the fear can be let go of and not mean that the thing that you're afraid of is going to happen, you can just maybe take a more sober look at the thing and really know whether it's for you or not on the other side of that fear. That's really important as the dominant to be able to see if your desires are setting off a fear and now you want to help with the fear. She's probably still feeling like you're getting needy and trying to get her to do the thing that you want. So being able to communicate that with grace and with clarity, what your desire is really important.
Yes, because most likely from the submissive side, the ego is going to intertwine them.
Yep.
And that's where I said it's really important to go deeper, to not focus on that want right away. What is underneath that fear? What is it connected to? And this might take months. This might take years to really get underneath it. But I'm here to tell you it's worth the wait. It's the patience, because once again, I'm going to bring up this P word. It requires her presence in the body in order to really feel into the textures of where the fear is coming from. And when we're talking about this childhood wounding, because that's where these things come from, gosh, it's taken me a while. And feel like I've been intentional with it, you know?
Yes, you absolutely have been. And I'm both grateful for that and proud of you for that, because just getting to the point where you could be intentional with it was a huge, huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I was so far the other way.
You really were. You know, one of the things that I say to you quite often is that you're my pride and joy. And when I say that, this is just one of the many things I'm referring to. I could not be more proud of you and of myself for helping you be at a place where you can experience your own freedom. Like, I couldn't do it for you and I couldn't make it happen, but I could and did everything that I could to help you find a place where you could find it for yourself. And when I see you feel that, like, that lightness, those tears that come to your eyes because you feel free, because you were able to let go of a fear, because of maybe something that I was able to help show you, that's everything to me.
Thank you for all of it. Your love, your patience, your compassion. Thank you for your for the ways that you triggered me.
I'll keep doing it.
Great.
So, moment of self-check here on myself. For our whole audience to see how I like to approach these things, I want to give you this open microphone in front of the world to share with me. And you don't have to get into specifics, but do you feel like there are any places in our life right now where I'm approaching anything with neediness, or where you feel like I'm being pushy?
No, not at all. The places where I have ever felt a sense of pushiness has always been about me. It's been my ego that wants to turn the tables and keep me focused on you and avoiding what is getting triggered inside of me. And I remember a few years ago where I'm like, maybe I use the word pushy. It feels like you're pushing me. And maybe back then there was some sense of that, but I also know and I feel in me all of your love and your devotion for me to be all of my soul's expression here on earth. I know that. So again, by now, I know that if I ever feel like this pushiness from you, it's probably about me. Now, I'm also not afraid to say it if I'm feeling like that, because I also want to let you into my experience. And I know that when I share that, you will also hold the mirror up to yourself and really tune into, am I or am I not in a sense of neediness? Like whatever that is for you. I don't know. I'm making it up. But I know that you're committed to that as much as you're committed to helping me be all of me all the way. And by me, I mean my soul's expression.
And that is so important to me. The part of what you just said, that even if you know on some level that I'm not being pushy, but you're still feeling like I am, that you'll say it. That is so damn important. Because, first of all, if I am being pushy, but I don't really know it, I haven't picked up on it about myself, if I'm getting a little needy or pushy, or like maybe just asking too much, or over focusing on something a little too much when I need to be a little more patient, sometimes I can't see that in myself until I feel your reaction to it. Sometimes it is just you like not wanting to confront something that there's a lot of fear around, or that you don't want to go there right now. And it is about you and not about me being pushy, but I can't hold that mirror up to myself, look at myself and see myself in it if you don't speak the fuck up. So I'm always grateful when you do. I don't take your speaking up as telling me that I need to back off, because sometimes I need to not back off. Sometimes I need to confront you with exactly what it is that you need to be confronted with. But if I can check myself and make sure in my internal experience that I'm not being a needy little bitch, then I can know if I do need to forge ahead, or if I do need to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't think I said this part of like when I'm in those moments, I can't really know if it's you or me either.
No, you're just feeling.
Exactly. So I need to express it so you can do what you need to with it. And I can hold that mirror up to myself too. Because sometimes it might be both.
most of the time it is somewhere in the middle. And I'm not going to say that I've never gotten needy. I've never gotten pushy or um, a little overexcited. I know I have. But I also know that it's happened plenty often where I've been really excited about something and you feel like I'm being pushy when that's not the case at all. And if I want you to trust, I'm going to use this as my closing statement for this episode. If as a dominant, you want your submissive to trust you enough to let you be the one to decide whether she's overreacting or she's the one who is having the internal experience, or if you're the one who's being needy, you have to be willing to allow her to call you out and to own up to it when she says you're being a little needy right now, or I feel like you're trying to push me into something. And if you actually are, say, you know what, I think you're right. You have to own it when you've been the little bitch as the dominant. If you ever want her to trust you, to say, no, actually, that's not what's going on here. Right now, you're afraid and you're trying to hide. She won't trust you if you are always making her wrong and yourself right. Because guess what? She's not always wrong. And like, you're not always wrong and I'm not always right. But I'm not always wrong and you're not always right either.
Right.
So you have to be willing to admit when you're wrong if you ever want her to trust you when you're going to tell her that she's wrong.
Absolutely. And my mind can go back to a moment where we had this and you came to me and you're like, you know what? I don't remember your words, but that was the point. I was being a little needy here and I see some things in myself. And you don't have to tell me everything. You may or you may not. You're going to share. I know you'll share what is necessary for me to know. But whatever that is always valuable for me because I'm also learning how to trust my own experience. And so sometimes that just feels like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here right now. I don't know if this is you. I don't know if this is me. I don't know if this is us, but this is just what I'm feeling. And the more that we've been committed to that expression and ownership, the better our whole relationship has gotten.
And also, as you've so eloquently said before on prior episode, words don't mean shit.
Yep.
Because if I'm just saying that to try to get you to trust me, or if I'm not backing that up with actually changing how I'm behaving, when I do see like, okay, I'm getting a little needy, I'm getting a little pushy, I'm getting impatient, I'm not letting her have her experience or her time here. If I'm not actually changing how I'm behaving and I'm just saying words, it's worse than not owning it in the first place.
Agreed.
Moral of the story. I need you as my submissive to be here with me and present in order for us to have any fun at all. In life, in kink, in the bedroom, in public, in anything. I need you here with me. And that is my primary role as a dominant, is to lead your life in a way that helps you out of your head, back into your body, and into the moment so you can be here with me so that I can lead you in this moment and in this experience. And that's always going to be my primary job as Sir.
You do a great job at it. Thank you.
I enjoy it. It is like both the most joyful thing for me to see you free. It's also the biggest challenge, like the biggest personal challenge. When I see you needing to be somewhere other than where you are so you can have a better experience and looking at how to help take you there, it's so interesting. I love being able to be this for you because of everything that we get to experience together, because of who I have to become in order to take you to these places. All of it. There's nothing more meaningful in my life.
Thank you with all that I am. I love you.
I love you too.